2022. I'm back again at Tata Parade for my yearly cancer checkup. The same building, the same memories, the same people. Reams and reams of people with bags and bags and bags waiting day to night for their checkup. Nothing has changed since Ma was here. At the gate, the security guard stops me. कहाँ जाना है आपको? Where do you want to go? He asks. Basement, I say, adding the name of the building. क्या करना है? What do you want to do? MRI. किसको करना है? Who needs to do it? मुझे, I say. He pauses, looks at me. आपको? He sounds surprised. आप तो patient नहीं लगते. You don't look like a patient. He says. Patient कैसे लगते हैं, sir? I ask. How do patients look? He smiles sheepishly. I proceed. Inside, I go down the same steps to that same hall by the rickety chairs and the walls with paint bleeding. I speak to the nurse. In a few hours, I will be on the other side of a huge glass double door, flat on a table, parts of my body in holes, lying as still as possible as a gadolinium-based dye circulates in my bloodstream and a machine probes to find within any part of my body, a cluster of those cells that killed my mother. Some people go on holiday every year. Some go to 100-year-old temples. Some go for amazing vacations to Venice. My yearly pilgrimage is to the same building where I held Ma for the last time. To do the very human act of trying to turn up my chin at nature, trying to hold my destiny within the pages of an annually updated file. As I walk through Tata today, I reflect on patients and what they must look like. Tired, old, weary, thin, hairless. Ma didn't look like that for most of the time of her battle. Even the last time she entered a hospital, she did so in a kurta, good shoes, and red lipstick. Till her last day, we use moisturizer. Does soft skin burn faster? As I check the time on my phone, I see my face in its blackness. Kajal, earrings, hair falling over my forehead. Have I dressed up for an MRI? I do not have an illness, but am I a patient? Suspended in time, routinely waiting, in lines outside MRI rooms. Patient through checks, patient through probes, patient through scans, year after year, waiting for anything to, if anything does show up. Being ill requires a lot of patience, a lot of it, till either the illness runs out or you do. As a nurse preps me for the scan, I feel a strange closeness to Ma. What a way this is to remember we are made from the same flesh. A few saris, some pictures, her jewelry, her dreams, her recordings, and the possibility of cancer. What a strange inheritance this is. An inheritance of hope mixed with grief, of a vocabulary built by death, diagnosis, and disease. But at least I know, I'll think, as I enter the machine. Only, is knowledge power, or is it just as slow spreading a fear as the disease? Good evening, honorable doctors, surgeons, and all else present here. I am case number CU 32100127F, patient of cancer genetics clinic, healthy individual with BRCA2 germline mutation of unknown significance D, hot D apparently I learned today. And in my, when I'm not spending time here, I'm also called Shayonnita. The above, what I read to you, is an excerpt from a piece I wrote after my second MRI last year. This February, I got my third MRI, and now I'm an MRI veteran. So, when I'm waiting for the MRI, I actually give advice to other people. It's going to be cold inside. The machine does make a lot of sound. Don't reject the cotton, okay? Really. To tell you a little bit about my genetic history, my mother, and I will not be telling you her case number, had both BRCA1 and the BRCA2 mutation. She died in 2021 after fighting cancer for 4 years. Herself for 4 years, right? She spent her last 3 months at Tata Parade under the wonderful Dr. Sudeep Gupta in a strange dance with the same waiting. Especially in Tata. In Tata, you're always waiting. But my mother and I, despite the similarities in our genetic makeup, were she was, I am, whatever, different people. In her 4-year fight with cancer, she read very little about what was growing inside her. My father nearly quoted research papers to doctors, but Ma stayed away from it all. There's only one thing she wanted to read, the Bollywood pages of the newspaper. I, meanwhile, when I first heard about Tata 2, as I waited for results from Dr. Serene's clinic, read everything I could possibly get my hands on. The first, of course, was Dr. Siddharth Mukherjee's Emperor of All Maladies, where one sentence really stayed with me, and I paraphrase. Cancer, perhaps, is an ultimate perversion of genetics, a genome that becomes pathologically obsessed with replicating itself. But if we, as a race, seek immortality, then so too, in a perverse sense, does the cancer cell. And interestingly, isn't this infinitely regenerating cell, the human sci-fi dream, the story behind X-Men, where genetic mutation allows superhumans to regenerate whole hands and heads? Shouldn't I have like a third breast? How then did this dream become a human nightmare? That's a question I'm sure all of you, all of us, are on both sides of this jaunt with mortality are obsessed with. Where did this mutation come from? When and how does this gene become active? What is possibly a trigger? How can my own body not listen to me and just stop? What should I feel about a variant that simply doesn't have enough data that may or may not be cancerous, and even if it is, may or may not even cause cancer? This is even worse than the uncertainty of finding love in the times of Tinder. But why does cancer happen? Why are more people having it now? Why do children have it? Is it the prolonging of life? Is it food coloring? Is it mobile phones, pesticides, biomagnification, karma, capitalism, survival of the fittest? Is cancer and not a giant meteor how we all die? I asked this last one to Dr. Serene when I met him at the genetic clinic for the first time in 2021, and he smiled. He patiently explained why not, and patiently answered all my other questions. But so answerless, I continue to be equal parts fascinated and horrified. Fascinated because in your world of research and surgery, and in this world of constantly learning more, my body is an active, living laboratory, the holder of a single wildcard gene that may end me, but contribute to another crucial data point in a new moment in science. In 4 years of watching Ma die and 3 years of getting MRI'd myself, I've learned one thing, and it's a contentious thing to say at a conference full of cancer specialists, but cancer doesn't kill. It's the waiting and the infection and the sepsis and the unkindness that does. And so, in my last bit, I want to tell you the story of 2 daughters. I'm not going to take names, but anyway. One is a towering figure, a famous Bombay oncologist, and sits at a hospital by the sea. He's a smallish, square man with expensive taste and not expensive bills, who storms into rooms, his white coat billowing, his entourage of residents following, and proclaims all within 3 minutes that the patient's potassium is low, albumin is low, hemoglobin has not recovered, probably should stop complaining, has little hope left, and will certainly die soon. For whom your mother is a chart number and a case result, and you and your father a mildly inconvenient byproduct. I want to contrast this with another gentleman, a young Tata resident, who couldn't save my mother, but did save our faith in humanity and doctors. A gentleman, Dr. J, let us call him, whom we called ever so often at random hours, including on the night that Ma almost died, and on the evening when she did finally die, who came running from the old building to the new one, 3 buildings, 8 floors, skidding across corridors, only to perform CPR on my dying mother, even though we all knew that she was possibly already gone, only because to him, my mother, who would grill him every single night on the same questions again and again and ever so cantankerously, was not just a file number, but also an actual person. He was a doctor who identified that cancer, who identified that cancer doesn't happen to bodies, It happens to families and minds with dreams, and mothers who wait to go back to being just mothers. He's a doctor whose face we hadn't even seen because it was COVID times, but who, along with his team of senior doctors like Dr. Gupta, Dr. Dutt, Dr. Gulia, kept my mother alive for a whole extra 6 months through sheer faith, empathy, and love. A lot has been said today about empathy and love and about the scientific terminology of all of this, and I can't contribute to that. All I can say is that sometimes waiting for answers, and we're always waiting for answers, right, even without cancer, is difficult. It's strange. And so a doctor who goes that slight extra mile to make you feel seen, to make you feel like they do care about you, saving you, not just her life, means so much. I am not a doctor, except to my grandfather's mobile phone and badly written advertising copy. But I often wonder if doctors also check their breasts for lumps. I wonder if doctors know what it feels like to be inside an MRI machine for 2 hours and vibe to its sick beats, yo. Do doctors also love their mothers and at home call their stool potty? Do doctors also notice that Onco case 243's eye color is very beautiful? On this side of the cancer game, I can never know what it must be like to be a doctor. I can't even imagine how hard it can be. I can still read, I can still understand English. A few weeks back, I was at my third MRI, and there was a lady there, and the doctor was trying very hard to speak to her. She couldn't speak English or Hindi or Marathi. And all he wanted to know from her was when was her last period. And she kept showing him her file. And what does she even understand of cancer or genetics? I don't know how impossibly hard it must be to gauge, to know, and to predict, and to often deliver the worst news. Or even stranger, admit that you, the expert, just don't know. How weird it must be to check the breasts of strangers and write sentences like, highly nodular for giving age. All I can do and say is how even the littlest kindness from you can go a very, very long way. Even in the smallest things, like the lovely soft-spoken lady in a scarf who a few weeks back smiled at me while examining my breasts, tenderly, even reverentially, recognizing that under my brash bravado, my brash topless bravado, was a scared girl who often wonders if she'll be still lovable as a woman, even without breasts. This hand doesn't shake, but if I were to operate on my daughter, it would, says Dr. Asthana, a caricaturish character who laughs to release anger in a movie called Munna Bhai MBBS, proposing that as a doctor, you can't ever have emotions for your patient. He's right. You shouldn't. But empathy from the human you are towards the human they are, that's a whole other matter altogether. Thank you.